Inktober, day number 6. So far, so good. My 6th drawing today. So far I've done 5 images. You can look at some of my previous videos to look at my 5 daily uploads. And let me tell you a little bit about me before I move on. My name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic book artist for Marvel Comics, DC Comics. You can check out my website. My website is waldenwongart.com. And I also have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/waldenwongart. All the links are below this video description, so you can check that out if you have the time. Also, any of the art tools you see in my video that I'm using, and if you're interested in using any of those tools and buy some for yourself on Amazon, check out the link below. Okay, so back to Inktober. Inktober number 6. Every so often, I would, actually all the time, anytime someone comments on my video, I would read it all and I would try to respond to everyone. And some of my viewers suggested some nice characters to work on. And one of the characters was M.O.D.O.K. So he suggested M.O.D.O.K, and I thought, I've actually never worked on M.O.D.O.K for Marvel Comics before, never any of the published work, and I've never actually drawn M.O.D.O.K. He's an interesting character, and this is what turned out. Okay, I'm going to show you how I approach drawing this, from sketching it to pencils to filling out the details, all the way to inking it. So without further ado, let's check out how I sketch everything out in basic shapes first. Here we go. Okay, so with a blank piece of paper, I'll start sketching in a huge cylinder, like a really big barrel for the body. And then I'll sketch in the legs and then the arms and then the blast on the bottom, just to get all those shapes in. After I sketch everything out in basic shapes, I'll go in there and I'll start drawing the details around the basic shapes, like the straps or the hair or the shoes, all the details, like the belt buckle over here and then the headband. I'll just draw it around the shape. So in my head, I see that image, I'm just drawing it around that shape. And then I'll just take my time and I'll sketch a lot of lines, and then the lines that I like, I'll just keep it. The lines I don't like, I'll just erase it. Here I'm putting placement of where I want the eyes to be, where the nose is, where the mouth is, and basically all the headgear, and then his hand, just sketching all the little details of the hand. Sometimes drawing hands are hard, so I'll draw it once. I don't like it, I'll draw it again. And again, make sure you have enough fingers. We don't want to make the same mistake as my last video where I drew 6 fingers and I erased it and I redrew it and I drew 6 fingers again. Make sure you count all your fingers. So 4 fingers and 1 thumb. And then here I'm drawing the face part, the bottom part of the blaster, just putting in all the curves, all the details. So the next step, after I have everything sketched out, I will start drawing the face. I'll draw the face using basic measurements, where the eyes are, where the nose are, where the mouth is, how wide the mouth is in comparison with the eyes. And I just sketch a few lines, and then when I'm happy with it, I'll start drawing darker lines. So after sketching everything down, usually when I sketch, I'm sketching very lightly. I'll go back and I'll use my pencil and I'll draw on top of my sketch the lines that I do like. I'll pick the best fit line and I'll draw it darker. So when I'm drawing darker in pencil, and then when it comes time for me to do the inking, I don't have to focus on the sketch lines. I'll focus on the darker lines. And after I have the face and I'm happy with the sketch of where the proportions and everything is, I'll go in there and then I'll start drawing more details around the face, where the shadows are, where the wrinkles are, darker eyelids, the shadows underneath the headband, shadows underneath the chin. So all of that, I'll start drawing it in pencil. So when I'm inking it later, everything will be there for me to ink. So it's not me just inking and drawing at the same time. I'm placing it there and I'm inking it later. So here I'm going to go in there and add shadows to the face. The face is the most important part of any character. So I want to focus a lot of details on the face and put it in there. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to start inking everything with a template. Any areas that requires a perfect circle or an oval, I would just use a template. A template is these plastic little ruler kind of things, and it has like perfect circles of different sizes or an oval of different sizes. And usually I'll use repeatograph technical pins, but for this Inktober piece, I'll use microns and fine liners. Microns and fine liners are the same drawing tools that I bring to comic book conventions. So if people ask me to do a commission, I'll just use those same tools. It's easier to carry and it's just faster to work with. And here's the fun part. This is my round template, the green one. I'll just go use the template and I'll use a micron and I'll ink in all the circles. And then for the knees, just the 2 little areas, I'll use the oval template. The oval template just has different degrees, different sizes, and different angles of the template. And then here I'm using the brush that I usually use, and I'm just gonna freehand inking all the curves. I could use a template to do all those curves, but I decided why not just freehand everything and make this project go quicker. So inking all the curves, all the arcs, and then I'm pivoting my arm and my wrist as like a compass so I can get those nice smooth arcs. So I take my time and I'm just pivoting all the angles. You'll notice that on my left hand, I'm constantly turning the page, but my right hand is staying in the same place. So here I'm doing larger curvy crackles, the bigger dots with the brush, because with the dots, it just creates this energy effect. So I'm going to add more dots along the way. And earlier I made a mistake. That's why you see two dots that are connected. I'm just adding more dots to cover up my mistake. So when all is done, no one is even going to know this the mistake. It will just look like it's part of the artwork. Adding more shadows to the face, adding more details, more wrinkles, and more meanness to MODOK. Give him some attitude. Then here I'm giving a darker line, shading the tongue, putting in a lot of wrinkle lines to make it look cool. And then here I'm just adding the hairlines, and I'm contouring the hair with the shape that is growing from the middle of the head. So the hair comes out in the middle of the head and it just curves out to the outside of the head, kind of like a bowl cut from the Beatles. And then here I'm just doing some more tapering lines, some shadows, and all the fun stuff on the hands. So after all that, I'll start inking in all the shadow areas. So for the shadow areas, I'll look at where the light source is. And MODOK is, I think he's one of the funniest characters that I've ever seen. He has this big, is this big character sitting on the throne and this blast on the bottom. It looks like he has a major case of diarrhea, like he's sitting there pooping or something. But I always thought he was just a funny character, sitting there like that. So again, back to what I was talking about. The light source is coming from here, so the shadow will be away from the light source, on the outside of the light source. So I'll start doing the shadows here and here on the outsides, and then we'll just add shadows, and then I'll start tapering the shadows, tapering some of the shadows where there's a gray area. So I'll do that one at a time, tapering lines from a very thin line to a very thicker shadow area. Here now I'm going back to the hair area and I'm adding more blacks, more values to the artwork. So instead of MODOK being just like a bubble drawing, I want to add some shadows in there just to make certain areas pop more. Adding shadows just gives more depth to your artwork. After I would add shadows, I would go in there and I would taper lines to give it some of the gray areas. Taper lines are these parallel lines that goes from a very thin line to a thick black area, or the opposite. It could be from a black area pulling out to a very thin area. And I can achieve this by using a brush. It's really easier. You can use a quill and it'll work, but the brush works the quickest for me. So just go in there and adding some sheen. The next step, I'll start hatching in some of the areas. So when I'm hatching, as opposed to tapering lines where it's like a thin line that goes to a thicker line, I'll start hatching lines. And hatch lines are just thin parallel lines that's evenly spaced apart from one another, and I'll start at a nice area and I'll end at a nice area. So I'll hatch one direction first, and then later I'll hatch another direction. That's when I'm cross hatching. And here I'm adding some cross hatch line on his forehead, so it looks like it's kind of glowing. And then on the left and right side of his headband, some hatch lines over there just to give it some values, so it's not a flat white area. So after that step, I'll start doing the sheen of the armor. So just like Iron Man or Colossus or any comic book character that's drawn and there's a metal sheen, there's a black wobbly line there. So on certain areas, I would just add black wobbly lines. And then there's no real method to it. I just think about where the light source is and then where the shadow is, and I'll just start scribbling in those little wiggly lines. And then I'm going to continue adding some sheen all across all the areas that I see armor. Just give it some bloopy lines, and after that I'm just gonna add smaller curvy dots, little black dots all over the place with the brush. I added larger black dots, and this is like a glow from his forehead. And then I'll connect some of the dots, and after I connect some of the dots, I'll just go in there and add more details on the thing underneath his mouth, some cross hatch lines. and then use a micron to ink in the blast, the diarrhea blast. And then just go in there and add more blast. This is more like how Arthur Adams does his blast, and then I like the way he draws it, so I'm copying his formula and adding it to my own artwork. And when all that's done, wait for all the ink to dry. Once it's dry, erase it. I'll erase it in between my two fingers so I don't scrunch up the paper. With the kneaded eraser, once I'm done with that, I'll use a vinyl eraser to erase the stubborn areas. And here I'm just using white ink, white out. And then when all that's done, I start working on a Kirby crackle. Earlier, you saw me do larger Kirby crackles because I was just using a brush. With a brush, I can just do bigger areas. And then after I'm done with the big areas, I'll go back with a technical pin, a repeatograph technical pin. I'll do smaller dots around it. When all the smaller dots are done, I'll start using a white gel pen as well as whiteout. I also use whiteout to do some of the larger white areas. Okay, next up, I'm using a large repeatograph to ink in smaller Kirby crackles, smaller dots. So I have a variety of big dots, medium dots, small dots, and little pointy dots. After inking all that in, just to make sure it looks like a blast, I'll use a whiteout pen and I'll ink white dots on top of black dots. So there's a lot of energy dots coming out from his forehead. And then when I'm done, I'll just sign my name. And once the name is signed, I'm done. I'm not going to work on it anymore. And then here's the finished piece. MODOK in all his glory. Look at that glow. Look at that Kirby crackle. So there you have it. That's me working on this MODOK piece. So I hope you enjoy watching this video on how I started sketching everything out, designing everything, placing everything, drawing the facial features, all the way to inking it and finishing the final piece. So if you want to see this more in detail, check out my website. My website is waldenwong.com. I'll post this image where you can see this in full, and also check out my Patreon page. My Patreon is patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. A lot of fun stuff that you can see there if you're one of my patrons. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. So until next time, keep on drawing. I hope you're also doing Inktober, and I hope my videos are inspiring you to draw. So until next time, keep on drawing. Bye-bye. Okay, so that's the MODOK piece, and while I was doing this video, right after I finished the video, I got the bell rang from a delivery person, and he delivered this package for me. This is a nice, hefty package. I'm not gonna open it yet. I'm gonna open it at a future video, but it's something cool. Let me give you a sneak peek of what it is. Right over here, it's from Image Comics, and it's something I worked on. I have a clue of what it is, but I'm gonna open it up at a future video and do a review of what this item is. So this, we'll wait for the next video.